Alright, and for two, when we are doing the general solution, the first thing that you need to know are the quadrants. For example, we have the first quadrant. This is the first quadrant. Then we have the second quadrant. We have the third quadrant. We have the fourth quadrant. Okay. Then on first quadrant, in fact, here we have 0 degrees. Then here is 90 degrees. Then up on 180 degrees. Up on 270 degrees. Meaning that here we have the angle between 90 and 0, that is 90 degrees minus theta. Then here we have 180 degrees minus theta. Then we also have 90 degrees plus theta. Then here we have 180 degrees plus theta. Then here we have 360 degrees minus theta. Then another thing that you need to know, which one is positive in which quadrant. In first quadrant, all of them, all the trig ratios are positive. Then here it's only sine that is positive, cos is negative, tan is negative. Then here it's only tan that is positive. Then cos is negative, sine is negative. Here is only cos that is positive. Then tan is negative and sine is negative. So that's what you need to know when you are dealing with the general solution. Another thing that you need to know, the periods for the graph of sine and the graph of cosine and the graph of a tan. So let's start with sine and cos. Sine graph and cos graph, the period is 360 degrees. And also cosine, the period for cosine graph is 360 degrees. But for tan, the period is that is tangent graph. The period there is 180 degrees. That's what we need to know. Meaning that if you are dealing with the function of cos or sine, so your general solution will be equal to x is equal to, it will depend, let's say, reference angle plus k times 360, where k is an element of the integers. It will be the angle, let's say the angle there, not the reference angle, let's just say the angle, I would say 8 degrees. It will be 8 degrees. Okay, but if you are dealing with a tan, your x will be equal to your 8 degrees, but plus k times 180 degrees, where k is an element of the integers. So that's how the general solution is. Then you check whether your tan is positive or negative. If it's positive, we're talking about a third quadrant. Your general solution will be on third and first. If tan is negative on second quadrant and a fourth quadrant. So your solution will be on second and fourth quadrant. Now let's take an example. The first example that I have is sine is equal to, that is our first, sine what? X is equal to 1 over 2. So if we can look here, sine is positive. Then which quadrant? Which quadrants? sine is positive. So sine theta is positive in first quadrant, that is all, and in second quadrant. So it's a first quadrant and in second quadrant. In second quadrant, we have 180 degrees minus theta. So which means we are going to have the solution on first quadrant and second quadrant. Now let's first calculate the reference angle. X will be equal to sine. Let's throw away the sign. If it's negative, we remove it. That negative will give us the quadrant. So 1 over 2. Then let's press the calculator. The answer is 30 degrees. This is not the solution, it's just the reference angle. Okay? Then the solution is on first quadrant, as we said, is on first quadrant and second quadrant. First quadrant is any angle between 90 and 0, which means the reference angle can give us the first solution, which means the first solution is x is equal to 30 degrees. Now that we are talking about sine, when it's sine, we say plus k times 3c plus k times 360 degrees, where k is an element of integers. Then we're done. This is the first solution. This is the first solution from the first quadrant. Okay, now let's go to the second solution. The second solution is on the second quadrant because sine is also positive on the second quadrant, which means the second solution is on the second quadrant. On the second quadrant, we know that there is 180 degrees minus the reference angle plus k times 360, where k is an element of the integer. So it's 180 degrees minus 30 degrees plus k times 360 degrees, where k is an element of the integers. Now the solution, the second solution now will be equal to x, which is equal to 150 degrees plus k times 360, where k is an element of the integers. Then we are done. That is the first solution. This is the second solution. That is our number one, example number one. Then we have the solutions. Let's take number 2 now. Then number 2, our number 2 is sine x, which is equal to minus 1 over 2. So sine x is equal to minus 1 over 2. Now if you can look here, we have a negative angle here. This negative angle tells us that the solution is on the quadrants where sine is negative. Let's go back to the diagram. Sine theta on third quadrant is negative and on fourth quadrant is negative, which means we have two solutions, that is the third quadrant and the fourth quadrant. Now let's go, which means we are going to look at the third quadrant and the fourth quadrant. That's where the solution is. On third quadrant, we see 180 plus ra. That is the reference angle. On the fourth quadrant, we're going to say 360 degrees minus the reference angle. Now that the reference angle is already calculated in the above example, which means we have the reference angle which is equal to 30 degrees. Therefore, the solution number 1 will be on the third quadrant, where we say x is equal to 180 degrees plus 30 degrees plus k times 360 degrees. Then the first solution will be equal to 210 degrees plus k times 360 degrees. That is the first solution. Then solution number 2 is on the fourth quadrant. Now we're going to say x is equal to 360 degrees minus r, which is 30, plus k times 360, where k is an element of integers. Then we get 330 degrees plus k times 36. That is the second solution. Then we are done with that one. Okay, let's look for example number 3. So this is our number 3. Number 3 is tan x is equal to -1. Then again, the negative number tells us the quadrant that we must focus on. So we are going to look at the quadrants where tan is negative. Now tan is negative on the second quadrant, which means it's a second quadrant, that is 180 minus, and tan is also negative on the fourth quadrant, which is 360 degrees minus. So that is the fourth and the second quadrant. Here is 180 degrees minus theta. Then here it's 360 degrees minus theta. Then our theta is the reference angle. Now let's look for reference angle. Reference angle for this one will be tan inverse of +1. We just removed that one. That one was telling us about, talking about the quadrants. So that is supposed to be 45. So the reference angle is 45 degrees. So the first solution will be on the second quadrant where tan is negative, meaning that the second solution will be x is equal to, because the angle is x, is equal to 180 degrees minus 45 plus k times, this is tan is 180 times 180 degrees, where k is an element of integers. So tan is 180 there. So because the period for tan is 180, therefore x is equal to 180 minus 45, which is 135 plus k times 180. That is the first solution. This is the first solution. Then let's go to the second solution. The second solution for this function will be on the fourth quadrant, which means we're going to say x is equal to 360 degrees minus the angle. The reference angle now is 45. It's 45 plus k times 180 degrees. Okay, so we get 360 minus 45, which is 315. So we have 315 plus k times 180 degrees. Then we are done with this one. So we have solution number 2. This is solution number 2. We have 2 solutions here. Then we are done with number 3. Let's look at the last one, that is number 4. In this case, we have sine and cos. So when we have sine and cos, we must think of tan. Remember that tan theta is equal to sine theta over cos theta. So which means let's try to make one trig ratio, which is what? Which is tan in this case. Meaning that we can transpose one of the two. Now let's transpose cos. We have sine x, which is equal to minus cos x. Then we can divide by cos, because when you divide by cos on sine, you get tan. So let's divide by cos in both sides. So let's divide by cos x. This and that cancel. Then we get tan x here, which is equal to -1. Meaning that the solutions are the same as of number 3. So I will not do this one because of that. But what you need to know is that when you see sine and cos, you must think of tan. Okay? When the angles are the same, we have x here, we have x here, which means we must think of what? Of tan. Now let's do another example with sine and cos. In this example, there is sine, there is cos. But the angles are not the same, which means we cannot get tan because the angles are not the same. Now, the first thing that you need to know in this case you must first transpose in this one cos, then we get 3x. Now that the trig ratios are not the same and the angles are not the same, you must change one of the trig ratios. You must change one of the trig ratios. For example, you can change sine so that you have cos, or you can change cos so that you have sine. There are cofunctions which says sine of 90 degrees minus theta is equal to cos theta. Then cos of 90 degrees minus theta is equal to sine theta. These are cofunctions, which means we can use them. Now we want to change this one in terms of cos, meaning that we can use this trig, this word, the cofunction of sine. We have sine, we want cos, which means sine is the same as cos of 90 degrees minus x in our case, which is equal to cos 3x. Okay, now that you have same trig ratios, you can drop them, then you are left with the angles. So 90 degrees minus x will be equal to 3x. Okay, then after that you can solve x to get the reference angle. If I transpose here, I will get this one will be positive, then we'll say plus x here, then plus x here, so which means this one is out. Then 1 plus 3 is equal to 4, where 4x, which is equal to 90 degrees, plus that was sine cos plus 360 degrees, where k is an element of integers. Then we divide by that 4. So we are going to divide by 4 here. So we have 4. Nalapa we divide by 4. Nalapa we divide by 4. Then we get the solution in this case. We get the solution. We get our solution. Then we're done. Now that the angles are not the same, you must use the cofunctions. Now that the angles are not the same, you must use the cofunctions. Then let's press calculator. 90 divided by 90 divided by 4 is equal. So our solution will be equal to, in this case, x will be equal to 22,5 plus 360 divided by 4, it should be 180, it should be 90, yes. So it's k times 90, where k is an element of the integers. So we are done with these examples. It's easy like that. That is the general solution. Thank you.